though I'm in full agreement with the theme for this afternoon's discussion, that the internal threats loom larger or as large as our external threats, I wish to focus on just these two issues. One is to highlight the fact that notwithstanding the internal threats that face us, there is an imperative need for us to build and maintain credible, conventional and strategic military capability. And second, I want to briefly touch on the aspect of root causes that have been mentioned as part of this, for terrorism and other activities that go on, because I'm sure my other colleagues will touch on the other issues. Now, in any strategic analysis that one does, scenario exercises and all which one has been doing while in service and even after retirement, looking at the global scene, the situation today as I see it is that a scope for conflict, physical conflict between India and any major powers or any power groupings, you look at it, with the United States of America, I don't see any physical conflict in the next 20, 25 years or more maybe. We may have differences of opinion, but one doesn't foresee a conflict. With the European Union, again, I cannot, imagine a situation of conflict. With Russia, I cannot, again, see that happening. I'm talking of even 20, 25 years ahead. Japan, no. When you look at China, the other major power, yes. I think Kamal touched on that. The boundary dispute, the Tibetan issue with the Dalai Lama in our country, and thirdly, the very aspect of the fact that we are economic rivals within the region and at the global level may induce, so there is scope for conflict. And I'm sure that our political establishment, the political leadership and our diplomatic community will work to do their best to avoid such a conflict taking place. Because I don't think it is either in our interest or in China's interest that we enter into a conflict. But I do feel that if there's one sure way of ensuring that there is no conflict, it is by having a credible military and strategic capability. That itself will ensure that conflict does not take place. So that's the first point. The second point I just briefly wish to touch on this aspect of root causes which often appear in context of the internal insurgency situation in our country and in context of global terrorism. Firstly, insofar as our internal situation or the insurgencies within the country are concerned, even where some of the movements and groups resort to terrorism, there is a logic to it, in the sense there is an ideology. They have a cause, in the sense they are either seeking to secede from India or looking for more autonomy or something like that. Or they have, like the Naxal groups, revolted because of the lack of governance which has in many ways impacted on those sections of society. So there is a certain logic to it. And I would say with a bit of trepidation that this sort of logic, though it does not excuse terrorism at the international level, could also possibly apply to groups like the Hamas who are fighting in Palestine or the Hezbollah in Lebanon. As I said, I do not condone terrorist activity, but I'm just trying to. But when you look at the other phenomenon manifested in the recent Mumbai attacks, the train bombings in Mumbai some time back, the attacks in the USA in 2001 on the 11th of September, the Madrid train bombings, the London bombings, the Bali bombings, I don't think you can apply this root cause excuse or argument to that, because they are just mere killers out to sort of cause or rampage in the international system. Maybe there are also some of those groups driven like the Al-Qaeda and the International Islamic Front or something like that, looking, to promote this ideology of a caliphate from Spain all the way through to the Philippines or something like that. But I cannot accept that this business of root causes, deprivation, poverty, or that sort of stuff is what motivates that. I think that is a different phenomenon, and we need to recognize that if we are to deal with it effectively, because that has to be rooted out. That menace needs to be rooted out. Thank you.
Thank you, especially for staying in time, because we only have about 48 minutes, 35 seconds left. So, Admiral Das.
Yes. You know, if 2611 has done anything, it has sent conventional concepts of security for a toss. What our concept of security earlier was that wars will be military between nation-state adversaries, Pakistan, China, whatever. Civilian populations were not involved ever in a war that India fought with Pakistan. I read up somewhere that the total number of civilian casualties in all the wars that we have fought are less than the people who die in 1 year road accidents in Delhi. So civilian populations were not involved except moral support and so on. Militaries were involved versus militaries. Even in the counter-insurgency, say on the northeast, the Mizo National Front, the NSCN in Kashmir, essentially what the army called low-intensity conflict. The actions were by security forces, targeting on security forces, and occasionally, all right, civilians also died in IED blasts, and a whole number of them died. But the focus of the terrorists or militants was the security forces. That scene has now gone. What has happened since then is, whether in Sarojini Nagar, or in Pahalganj, or in Ahmedabad, or in Mumbai, civilian populations have been targeted. In the first case, targeted through hit and run. Put some bombs here, run away. Put some bombs there, run away. But in the latest operation, a military action against civilian population has been conducted. The people who came, we may say Lashkar, etc., but they were trained in a military fashion. Otherwise, they could never have been able to carry out the operation that they did. Transfer from one ship to a fishing boat, from a fishing boat to a rubber boat, for a rubber boat to come ashore at Machhimar Nagar. It is simply not possible without full-fledged military training, whether it is by ISI, whether it's by retired military people or whatever. But the targets are civilians. That is the lesson to be understood, which is why security is acquiring a new dimension. So let us not talk about the failures of 2611. So what do we do from here for 2611? One thing, of course, is that prepare a response, get our forces ready, put NSG in Mumbai, Calcutta, whatever it is, equip them properly, etc., but also have an organization structure. Now look at the flaws in the organization structure. In Mumbai, there are marine commandos sitting across the harbor. They could have been at the Taj Hotel within 1 hour of the assessment having been made that we are facing a major situation. By 10 o'clock, it was known that we are facing a major situation. But our organizational structure is such that they could come only the next morning. Look at the National Security Guard scene. The situation is critical. After all, we were sending 200 people, and they had to wait at Delhi airport for 2 hours because the aeroplanes from Chandigarh could not come. But at Delhi airport were sitting 12 aeroplanes of Jet, of Kingfisher, of Sahara. Any one of them could have been requisitioned. That power rests with the government, and they could have been flown, but the organizational response capability was poor. So we have to do something about organizational response capability apart from building up these forces. The other thing we have to take into account is that in this scenario of reacting to 2611, we should not forget some larger issues. One, of course, is the geopolitical issue of nation-state adversaries, potential or whatever. The other is the larger, bigger non-state actor. Now look at Somalia. What is happening in Somalia? We may say that we are sending a warship only because, oh, India is a big country, we must show our presence. No, that is not true. Look at our two-way overseas trade. In this financial year, $500 billion is this extent. If it grows at 14%, it has been growing 27% over the last 4 years. If it goes 14%, then $1 trillion by 2013. Imagine this is the extent of India's overseas trade going east and west. So we are vitally interested in the security and safety of this trade. Leave aside the safety of our Indian crews who are manning so many international ships. So the safety of this trade, the safety of our people, which has critical impact on economic growth, stemming from the non-state actor, whether Somalian, whether Malaysian, whether Al-Qaeda, whether whatever, is irrelevant. but it is affecting India's national interest directly and vitally, and we have to be involved as a maritime force in coping with it somehow.